Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, the podcast where Senator Joseph Cryan talks about the latest in New Jersey's 20th Legislative District. This week's guest, Inroads to Opportunity CEO Angela Calzone.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to A Cup of Joe. I'm State Senator Joe Cryan, and thanks again for joining us. I am especially honored as we celebrate and honor Autism Awareness Month to be with the great Angela Calzone. Angela, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Angela is the CEO of Inroads to Opportunities, an organization that does incredibly special things located in the borough of Roselle. And Angela, you're going to do the talking, but I will tell you, as somebody who's been fortunate enough to tour the facility, both as an assembly member and a member of the state senate, the work you do is God's work. And I can tell you that the impact you make to families far and beyond just the folks you serve is immensely grateful and appreciated by everyone who gets the opportunity to deal with it. And I hope today that everybody learns all about Inroads and all about the great work you do. So let's talk a little bit about you first. Okay. So tell me, you have been the CEO, I believe, since July of 2023. Am I right about that?
That's correct. Just a little over 18 months.
Okay, but you had some involvement with Inroads before that, correct?
I did. I met Inroads probably about 12 years ago. They weren't even Inroads. I always kid with everybody that I was in the room when Inroads was born. They were the Occupational Center of Union County since 1959. And I met them about 12 years ago when I had my own consulting firm, and we would do strategic planning and customized training for nonprofits throughout New York and New Jersey. A lot of that was grant funded through the Department of Labor. And the trainer who was supposed to show up, who was one of our trainers, took ill that week. And so I jumped in and I went to the Occupational Center myself. And do you ever have a feeling when you walk through a door someplace that, oh, wow, this is where I'm going to live? I couldn't conceive how that was going to happen. I had my own business. I was busy in New York City and in New Jersey, going from company to company, from nonprofit to nonprofit. We did a lot of the ARCs throughout the state. We had a number of organizations we worked with that supported individuals with disabilities, both physical, blind and visually impaired. But when I walked into Inroads, something was very special. And this was actually 2 CEOs ago. But I started to work with them, and everything just clicked. We worked on their strategic plan. We trained a lot of their leaders. I was there to transition the existing CEO out as he retired and coach and support the oncoming CEO. Her name was Michelle Ford, and she served probably about 8 years as CEO. But throughout that time, I stayed in close contact, supported her and her initiatives, became close with the leadership team there, and then Michelle announced that she was going to be retiring in a couple of years. And, you know, true to the way that we operated, she wanted to talk about succession, and as she was talking about it, I was like, that's when the light bulb went off, and I said, I think we may have a succession plan here. And the rest is history. I joined the organization in 2020, just before COVID, in January. And so I was there for the pandemic, and been there ever since. So then when she finally did retire, I assumed the role. And it has been an absolute blessing and a gift.
Well, in a moment, I want you to talk about the clients you serve and all the things that they do there. But how important is it that we recognize, for example, we're here in April, right, Autism Awareness Month. How important is that we raise the profile and kind of make sure people understand those among us who are just as special?
Right. Well, I think it's critical for all of us because each of these folks are a part of the community. There's a lot of statistics and data to support that we are in a situation there where autism has become almost an epidemic. 10 years ago, it was 1 in, 55, 60 individuals had autism. Now we're looking at 1 in 35, with New Jersey being the second highest state in the country with incidence of autism. So I think this is not something that's going away. This is not something that necessarily can be cured. So in that diversity, these are folks that learn differently and communicate differently and just navigate life differently. We've, like other things that we've embraced as a society over the years with individuals' differences, I think it's time we embrace this too and look at them as our neighbors, as our friends, as our co-workers, because that's who they are, and that's what they want, the same things that we want. So we've got to be there to support each other.
So does Awareness Month help folks understand that a little bit better because there's a little bit more of a spotlight this month?
I think it does, but I think the work has to be done every day. Awareness Month is wonderful because there's always extra publicity around that. There's ceremonies and flag raisings and things mentioned in congregations and school systems and things like that. So there's a lot more than there used to be. So it's very important that we have months like this to celebrate and shine a spotlight on the things that we need to do, the ways in which we need to support each other, whether neurodiverse or not. But I think the work really does have to be done every single day. And that's a lot of what Inroads does.
Well, let's talk about that. Okay? Let's, obviously a cheerleader here, but talk to me a little bit about, what does Inroads do? What does it offer? And talk about the clients. Talk about who the constituency that we both serve.
Okay. So Inroads actually started in the late 1950s when a few families who had individuals in their care, loved ones who had disabilities, and there wasn't anything for them to do during the day. And, family members work, and they have other responsibilities, and they didn't want to see their loved ones sitting home without anything challenging or exciting or consistent or productive to do. So they got together, and that's how the Occupational Center of Union County was formed. So these 4 or 5 individuals with their family's support, I think it was in Elizabeth at the time. I don't know if they rented a house or a small office, and they started to bring work in for them to do. And that's how it all began. Today we serve about 400 individuals each year with a variety of disabilities. Many of them are economically disadvantaged, but our services support folks from age of 16 through retirement. And we've got a program just about for everybody. In fact, we just applied through the state of New Jersey, and we're hoping to get approval that we can actually drop the age limit from 16 down to 14. So we can really get kids from high school age when they're starting to think about, okay, what am I going to do once I graduate? And, we've got a program that can suit just about anyone.
We'll talk a little bit more about it. So the program, so when someone comes in, a family member comes in, and they want to be productive. Mm-hmm. So what's the process like? What happens, and how does it work?
Well, you can come to Inroads at any time in your life. But just to sort of walk you through the whole life cycle, we can start folks as young as 16 years old, and those individuals are still in high school, and they would start in our school-to-work transition program. So what does that mean? Any school district could send a student who has challenges being in mainstream, or if the school system doesn't have a special needs support program, or a transition program, they could send them to Inroads. It's an out-of-district placement, and they will learn from us vocational preparation skills. They'll get exposure to all sorts of different occupations and jobs, what those roles and responsibilities look like and feel like and sound like. We do a lot of work with these kids where we're taking them onto job sites so they get to test and sample what they like and don't like. At the same time, there's a social component for them. There's a lot of folks with them who are very similar to them, have similar challenges with socialization, similar challenges with job preparation. So the camaraderie that builds with these kids is wonderful. Now, if you have intellectual or developmental disabilities in the state of New Jersey, you can stay in high school until you're 21. So we can take these kids in our school-to-work transition program from 16 years old to 21. That's when they graduate high school. Once they graduate high school, there's a couple of options, and all the options live at Inroads, right? So they could, if they're work ready and they're willing and able, they will join our supported employment department. So what does that mean? That means we get their resumes ready, we cover letters ready, and we start interviewing at jobs. We start going to different employers and, filling out applications. And before you know it, they can get a job. And when they do get that job, we're there to support them on the job if permitted by the employer, which 9 out of 10 times it's not only permitted, it's welcome, because you're getting somebody who is going to assist you in onboarding your new hire, as well as helping teach them their responsibilities and tasks of the job. Now, if a kid graduates at 21 and they're not quite ready for employment, then they can go a different route at Inroads, of course. And this is through our Transition Plus program. The Transition Plus program just continues that transition process, still working with them on life skills, daily living skills. If I were to get a paycheck, how do I save my money? How do I manage my money? What's a nutritious lunch to bring to work every day? And how do I dress when I go on an interview? So you're still getting those transition skills. And then there's also, of course, a fun and social component. I said, if anything, that's the program I want to sign up for, because they go on the most rockin' trips throughout the state of New Jersey. So there's that social component, which is wonderful, and they're still pre-vocationally, getting ready for jobs. If by the time an individual is 25 years old, they still don't feel like they're ready to be in community integrated employment, which means, having a job someplace, that's a fancy way of saying, having a job someplace in the community, we have options at Inroads. Okay, if they need more support than the average employer or job coach could provide, then we've got a contract packaging operation they can work in. We've got food service, cafeteria they can work in. We've had a janitorial program, and we're spinning up a few other programs that I'm sworn to secrecy on until they get approved. But there's a lot of diversity under our roof as well, that they have the option to work in an environment where they're getting a lot more support, a lot more counseling, and still they get to be with their friends, they come to work every day, they earn a paycheck. So whatever you could possibly want or need for this population is at Inroads, and we're very proud of all these services. Now, if they decide they don't want to work at all, and I have one at home like that who's 16 right now, so we're really trying to encourage her to get a job, but it's, she doesn't want to work. And that's okay. These are the choices of our individuals that we serve. Then there's an adult day habilitation program, and that's a lot of fun. They go on trips, they do arts and crafts, they have music brought in, and still there's a learning component to it because they are continuing those life enrichment skills. Everything from hygiene to daily living to how to cook an appropriate meal, how to do your laundry, all of it. So there's something for everyone.
Just about to use those lines.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, I do want to shift to the employers just for a moment, right? Mm-hmm. It sounds like you have relationships with specific employers that may is that correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. We've got, I think, currently working with about 70 employers throughout Union and Essex counties. They could range in anything from restaurants and cafes to Walmart, Target. ShopRite's always been a big supporter of our community, offering opportunities for our individuals. They can work anywhere just like we can. It's really a matter of what their choice is, what their career plan and aspirations are, and what jobs are available in the community for them.
Okay. So is it based on each client? For example, if you have someone who's interviewed and gone through the process and will be part of the ShopRite family, mm-hmm. right? Someone everybody's familiar with in New Jersey, and their work with this community really is exceptional.
It is. Mm-hmm.
So how does it work? They interview. How do they get to work each day? How does that process actually happen?
All of that's very customized and individualized, and it's uniquely based on the circumstances of that employee. Mm-hmm. So just like at ShopRite, some folks take public transportation, some folks drive, right? In our community, it's very much the same way. Some folks will take public transportation if it's accessible to them. Some of them do drive. Some may leverage things like Union County Paratransit or New Jersey Transit Access Link. We will work with them on getting that all set up so that, they're not late for work or they don't have to leave early to catch a ride. You've got a responsibility now. You've got a job, so you've got to be able to get there when you're scheduled to work. And even things like, again, what to take for lunch, how much money you should bring with you if you're going to purchase your lunch, understanding how to clock in and clock out if you're an hourly employee. So there's a lot of things that, just like I said, I use the example with my daughter in her getting her first job. She's, you're 16, you don't know what to clock in, to clock out. A lot of these folks, this is their first job as well. So we're there to support them every step of the way, make sure that they're successful.
And anybody who's been in any job interview is always just a little bit intimidated
That's
along
right.
the way.
That's
so
right.
Imagine that.
Yeah, right. And, I would have loved a lot of what they get in terms of a benefit when I was going for my first job, right? That practice back and forth with what the interview is going to ask you and how should you respond, what your posture should be, what are you going to wear to the interview. How wonderful would that be for all of us to have had that with our first job? So we're delighted to be able to provide this to this community.
Do you have any, besides your daughter, do you have other stories or folks or clients that you can
Oh gosh, we have. Yeah, I could be here all day with the great success stories that we've had. So, we had an individual a couple of years ago came to us, very quiet, very shy, wasn't sure what he wanted to do, and we had him in the workshop for a little bit, which is the contract packaging area. He was doing okay. He wasn't excelling. He wasn't knocking it out of the park. He just showed up and did what he had to do. And then an opportunity became available for him in the cafeteria. And the sky opened up for him. This was where he was meant to be. So he did great work in the cafeteria, then was interested in community-based employment. He did that. And he has a job now where he is so happy and they love him, and I think he was recently promoted or something too, so he's happy and he's thrilled and he's making a living and he's able to, live his best life.
So you see the same growth in clients that are working that you do as we see more mainstream folks.
Absolutely.
As you go to work, you progress, you
Right.
grow as an individual. So we're talking about the same
sort of thing, right.
same plan here.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. So do you deal with, we talked about 70 employers that you have a relationship with. I would suspect, and maybe I'm being a little bit blind here, but I suspect that you have to deal with some myths about folks that hire with disabilities or some kind of, for lack of a better way to put it, questions employers may have.
Oh, absolutely. Misconceptions.
Misconceptions, that's the right word. Can you talk about that a little bit?
From personal experience, I can, because having been an entrepreneur and a business owner previously, years ago when I was approached by one of the local organizations that did similar work as Inroads, my first thoughts were, how's this going to work and what is this going to cost me? So I'm going to bring an individual who has an intellectual disability into my shop. Is that going to interrupt my workflow? Are my employees going to have to compensate for what this individual can and cannot do? Is there going to be any associated cost for me having to accommodate this individual? What are my customers going to think? Is this person going to be able to provide appropriate customer service? Are they going to be productive enough? And on and on and on. So those are the initial things that I thought of as a business owner. And sure enough, that's what most business owners who aren't very aware of how this works think. But once you get to just kind of put that barrier down and interview some of these individuals, you find out they are engaging, they are very much wanting to work, wanting to be a part of an employed community, and they're extremely loyal and they're productive. And sometimes they come with a job coach, which is very helpful, because then that really doesn't interrupt your other employees in terms of them having to coach and train and spend extra time and make an extra investment. But when we go to work, we help each other anyway, right? You have a new hire, comes into an organization, may not know the lay of the land, So your coworkers help you out. Yeah, that's where the bathroom is, or that's how we get in, that's how we log on to that computer system, or this is where those things get filed. It's the same. So there really isn't any difference in terms of, the folks that we serve versus, a non-disabled individual.
There might be one, though. There's a lot of loyalty, is there not?
Extremely.
Right? And in this day of people that change jobs, when you as an employer make an investment and with someone with an intellectual disability, you have a very strong belief in a higher percentage of the fact that employee will stay with you.
Right.
Am I right about that?
Absolutely. Yep.
So there's a lot of wins for an employer here.
There is, and a lot of our folks, as it should be with anybody, when you take a job, you take it very seriously. This becomes a part of who you are. This becomes the fabric of your personality. We identify, oftentimes, by the job we do. People are very proud of their work. That doesn't change because you may have a disability. In fact, again, all of the stories that we have are just so remarkable and wonderful that we had one individual who was a greeter, I'm going to say either at Walmart or, customer service type person at Home Depot. I'm trying to remember where they worked. It was a couple of years ago when I first came to Inroads before the pandemic. And he actually foiled a robbery, just because where he was and how loyal and committed he was, and he didn't want to see his employer be breached. And he worked with the police and everything. It was terrific.
Really?
Yeah.
The heroes among us.
Exactly.
What's
We
up?
come in all shapes and sizes and abilities.
We do, and everybody brings something to the table.
That's right.
That's what makes us all special. So talk a little bit more, if you don't mind. So there's, like Inroads provides, and we've gone over it a little bit, but I really want you to expand upon it. That individual, comes, no matter what their level is, they're getting everything from job coaching to individual wraparound services, and I really think it's important as we understand Autism Awareness Month and understand how special these folks are. Can you talk? I really want you to share a little more about that, if you don't mind.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, each individual that we serve gets an individualized service plan. So regardless of what program they're in, and sometimes they're in multiple programs at Inroads, or they're in a program by us, and they're at a program at another nonprofit for something else, maybe a respite program, or they're a resident of a residential facility. So we work in collaboration with other agencies. Whoever is supporting that individual, we're a community. So we're going to work with those other entities, those other providers. But within Inroads, everyone has a plan. Everybody's got goals and objectives, and a lot of that is driven by the individual themselves. Just like we've got a plan for our lives, when we talk amongst each other, we say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Well, those same questions are posed to our folks as well, because they've got vision for themselves, and they know what they want, they know what they like and dislike, they know where their strengths are, and all of that goes into the plan. So just as we would work with a coach, a life coach, or a consultant or something, we have that available to them in the form of their counselors. So most of our counselors are vocationally trained. We do have a mental health practice as well, but that's a bit separate from the general vocational work that we do. And so on a regular basis, regardless of what program you're in, your counselor is working with you and checking in with you to make sure you're meeting your goals, that you're overcoming objections and challenges that you may be facing, and that we want to ensure someone's success. And the plan can change, just like our plans change. We go into one thing thinking we want to be a doctor, and it turns out, we're really into like guitar or something, and that's okay. And those are the switches that we make in life, and that's what our folks can do too.
Or you're a consultant in New York City, and then you end up in Roselle, New Jersey, running a place. Things like that.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
One of the things in the community is that there are very individual needs, right? Sometimes it's sensory, sometimes it's social, and sometimes it literally is a mixture of all of the above, so to speak. Very individual services at Inroads?
Well, we have our overarching programs and services, but each individual plan for that individual, who drives that plan for themselves, and we support it. So, yes, you have your overarching services. So, we have our school to work transition, we have our transition plus services, pre-vocational, daily living, extended employment, and on and on. But within the framework of those programs, which are standard, that individual, the plan for them is customized. So they may spend, where you may have one individual who spends a full day in extended employment, you have another individual who maybe, a couple of hours in extended employment, and then they go to a group to learn some life enrichment skills. Or they may have some mental health concerns, so they're working with a mental health counselor. So it's highly customized. And I think that's the beauty of Inroads, is that we have the, adaptability to do that.
You bring out the special in everybody.
Exactly.
I will tell you on my tour, we all value work, right? No matter what job we do, we value it, right? And there's always the story, as my father used to say, if you sweep the broom, sweep it the best, right? It doesn't matter what you do it the best. And touring, I didn't want to do much talking. I got to tell you, talking to a couple of your clients and the value of a paycheck and the value of what it means, is just something, and the smile on the face about talking about what it means to an individual. You know what? It's just something very special to see, and it's got to be quite rewarding.
Yeah, no, it certainly is. And it is for them as well.
That's great to hear. So do me a favor. Talk to me a little bit more. So 66 years of success with Inroads, right? Different name, but same great philosophy.
Right.
And same great results. Talk to me about the future. What do you say?
Oh, gosh. We talk a lot about that lately, given the fact that I come from a very different space. And I always say that social services is kind of alphabet soup. We are supported by DDD and DVR, and that you have to have ABA plans and ISPs and so on and so forth. And so when I first got introduced to all of this, I was like, this is a foreign language, for me. But, I'm getting my licks in too, because now I'm talking to our leadership about KPIs and, things of that nature. So, it's a confluence of information now. So they get a little bit of business, and I get an awful lot of social services every day. But in terms of the future, I think we are coming together, everybody with a different discipline, and I've expanded the leadership team because I think anyone who runs a program or a service at our agency needs a voice around the table, because, we all represent a different facet of the agency. My goal, being in Union County, knowing we have a densely populated area, I know that serving 400 individuals a year is remarkable, but it's not nearly enough. I know there's so many people out there that we aren't touching, just in our county, let alone Essex or Middlesex or Somerset. So my goal within the next 5 years is to double the number of people that we serve, because they're there and they need us.
Double. Well, ambition, that's for sure.
Yeah.
God bless you. And hopefully, folks listening to this can spread the word a little bit too. So how can we help? If the mission that you laid out so well for us, how can the community, never mind government, but as we search for the ultimate acronym, by the way, right? How can the community help? How can we be part of the success of Inroads?
I think for Inroads specifically, it's always a blast to have people visit our website, because there's so much on there. There's wonderful podcasts like this, linked to these kinds of programs. There's a list of all of our services. There's our success stories on the website, how you can reach us, how you can donate, how you can volunteer, what jobs we have available. So it's a very robust site. So I invite everybody to go to inroads2.org, inroads2.org. But beyond that, in terms of just understanding individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities, like autism, like the neurodiverse community that we serve and support, I think it's just important for people to seek information. A lot of times, we don't pay attention to these things unless it personally impacts us. But with 1 in 36 people now on the autism spectrum, it affects every one of us.
Sure does. It sure does. That's amazing. 66 years of community growth, community impact, one story at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So, any other comments that you want to make sure we know?
Just, you know what, let's embrace each other, let's support each other, regardless of our ability, and let's just, ensure each other's success.
Well, in this Autism Awareness Month, we get to celebrate the very, very special leadership of Angela Calzone and the very incredible work of Inroads to Opportunities. Appreciate you taking a few moments with us today. We're going to have the information up on the website, which we encourage everybody to go to. Angela, again, it is
www.inroads2to.org.
Okay. Please take a look. Go to the website. You'll see that on our social media post as well. Learn a little bit more. And today, let's celebrate 1 in 36 of us, but let's celebrate all of us together as we continue to grow and learn and celebrate the success that Angela and her team provide each and every day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Real pleasure.
That's a wrap on this episode of A Cup of Joe, hosted by Senator Joseph Cryan. Thanks for watching, and until next time.